Building this sailboat is going to need a lot of parts cut out. Some of them are going to be very intricate and detailed. And for many years, I've wished I'd had a CNC machine to do this cutting. So this series of videos is going to start off another project in parallel with the sailboat build. And yeah, I'm going to finish a CNC machine that I started many years ago. Now, I actually started two CNC machines. The first one I started back in about 2011, and I'll show you what I have remaining of that one. It's not much, but I abandoned that one when I moved, and the place I moved to did not have a large enough garage for me to be able to continue the build. The second one that I started was in, well, let's see, the first one I started was in around 2011, and the second one was in 2016. And of the second one, I have almost a complete CNC machine. I just need to finish it and put it together. And I do have some videos and pictures from both of these projects that I'll include, and you can see some of the builds some of the build steps that I've taken so far in this. And yeah, so most of the inspiration for both of the CNC machines has followed a website. Originally it was a website called buildyourcnc.com, and I think that's right. I'll put a description, a link in the description, to make sure that you have the right website. Nowadays there's YouTube videos, and there's even a book. So the book here is Build Your Own CNC Machine, and this is a really great book. It has detailed steps, everything you need to be able to build your own CNC machine, just using some basic parts. As far as the mechanical parts go, you will need, of course, some stepper motors and some simple motor controllers and so on. Everything is outlined in this book, not just the mechanical, but also all the electronics, and how to the movement control. Everything's in here. So it's a really great book. I highly recommend, if you're interested in any type of CNC machine and you're interested in building your own, Build Your Own CNC Machine is a great resource. So where are we at on this project? Well, let me show you. This is all that I have remaining of the first CNC machine. It's really just the platform, or sometimes called a torsion box. And the reason it's called that is because you need the platform to be rigid. You don't want it to twist or bend while it's working. So this is constructed with 2 layers of plywood, and it's sandwiched in between other plywood. This is all 3/4 inch plywood, and the plywood in between is crisscrossed with some plywood going this way, and other plywood is going this way, and they are notched to be able to meet there and cross each other. It's a very strong system, and the idea for this CNC machine is that I wanted something that had a full 2-foot by 4-foot working area. So I wanted to be able to actually fit an entire 2-foot by 4-foot piece of plywood on here and be able to cut out parts. So in order to do that, the actual machine needs to have a working range that goes past that. And the idea here is I would have rails on the side that would extend out past by about maybe about a foot or so on either end, to allow a gantry to move back and forth. And I'll show you what I mean by gantry in just a moment. But imagine there's this big part of the machine that would move back and forth, and it needed to be able to move past the edge of this working platform in order to be able to get the full range. And likewise, going here this direction, the working platform needed the tool, the router that was doing the cutting, needed to be able to extend out past the edge here. So it was a very big and elaborate gantry that made this up. And I eventually, when I started again, I decided that this was just too complicated. So I decided to simplify it, and pretty much all I have left now is just this table. It was just too useful to try to cut up. I've used this since then for other gluing projects. I've got some glue marks on it here and there where I've just used this as a work table, and I haven't done anything with it as for the CNC machine since then. But anyway, here's some videos and explanation on how the original idea for this first CNC machine. Let's start with this SketchUp drawing that I did. You can see the table laying flat in this drawing, and you can see the rails that extend past the ends of the table. And in the middle you can see the gantry that I was talking about that will move back and forth along the rails. The next two images show a close-up of the table construction, followed by one of the gantry sides, and then both of the gantry sides, and then the gantry top and bottom, and then the gantry front and back. Here you can see the gantry being assembled. The notches allow the pieces to lock together. And here's the gantry flipped over on its side. Now in this picture, the slots at the bottom of the gantry are designed to allow the bearings to be tightened against the rails. Here are the X-axis rails that bolt onto the front of the gantry, and this complicated piece is a connecting plate that connects the X-axis and the Z-axis movement. You can clearly see the V-groove bearings also in the XZ axis plate. And then here it is connected to the gantry. Here's a video showing some of the movement. Overall, the alignment is really well aligned, and you can see how the movement extends even out past the edge of the table. The movement was a little sticky in some places, and not as smooth as it could be, but really I just felt that the design was a bit too complicated, especially that XZ connector plate. I mean, it has 8 V-groove bearings on it that have to align with the X-axis rails as well as the Z-axis rails. So this is one of the reasons why I abandoned this project. Okay, moving on to the second CNC machine that I attempted to build, and this machine actually followed more closely the design that you'll find in the book that I mentioned, Building Your Own CNC Machine, just because of how the bearings are laid out and how the pieces move and so on. But in many ways this is an older design, but this is the design that I switched back to when I abandoned the first CNC machine, because I think this is a lot simpler. Now, this CNC machine, I started building this also when I was in Florida, and it also, the build was disturbed when I had to move, and in this case I moved to New York. And again, I had a place that did not have a large enough build workshop to be able to continue. And in addition to that, yeah, I did have a garage, but it was very humid in the garage. And luckily, I kept most of the pieces of this CNC machine in the house. But you can see here's one of the lead screws that I kept in the barn, and it rusted. So as part of the rebuild of this, continuing this project, I ordered a new 1/2-inch lead screw. This is a foot long, and yeah, so this is not that expensive. This lead screw here is about $20 to $25, and so I'm going to get a new one of these that won't be rusted anymore. But the way this one works is I went with a smaller design. I didn't really try to go for a full 2-foot by 4-foot working environment. This one actually has inside the rails, it's about 18 inches, and lengthwise I think is around, I want to say it's around 36 inches from end to end. So I'm definitely not going for a full 2-foot by 4-foot, and really the working environment is even less than that, because I'm not trying to take the rails out past the end here. So really there will be a working range of maybe from about here to maybe only about in here somewhere. So there might only actually be like maybe a 28-inch working length, and left to right maybe this will go down to maybe 15 inches. But I mentioned earlier the gantry, and this is the gantry on this machine. This is one of the sides, just a piece of plywood, but it has these bearings and mounted on aluminum angle brackets, and so each of these bearings is at a 45-degree offset, and all of this rides on these aluminum rails, which are also angled here at a 90-degree bend. So sitting like this, there's a 45-degree bend angle on each edge. And the idea is that this gantry would sit down here like that, and it would roll along there, and it would be held in place by a board that goes underneath here. So that's why on this design there are some legs here that stick down. The ends kind of form a leg, and it gives a gap underneath here, and that gap is big enough for this board right here to go underneath here, and it will connect to the two sides and hold them in place so that the bearings don't fall off the rails. And in addition to that, the gantry also has this piece, which is the x-axis. By the way, the gantry, when it moves back and forth along this way, that's considered the y-axis, and this is the x-axis. So this goes along here like this. So this whole thing will slide back and forth like this. And what this will allow is it will allow the router to be able to move left to right across this. So the router could then move this way across this cutting surface. So this is the x-axis, and then we have over here the I guess you could say the router, the x-axis assembly maybe would be a good one to put there. Actually, no, wait, this is the z-axis. The x-axis is just these boards that I have here. I took the bearings off of the boards, so I have those right here. The bearing assemblies, like I said, it's just this aluminum angle brackets. They're offset. The reason why the bearings are kind of offset like that is so that the nuts on the back end have a place to tighten down. And I put some notches in the boards so that these bearings will sit in those notches, and with a couple screws here, it will hold this in place. You can see this, for instance, being held in place. This one's being held in place by a bolt here and one back there. Over here, you can also see that it's held in place by 4 bolts, 2 on the top and 2 underneath there. So yeah, so this CNC machine, I have all the parts, unlike the first one where I've pretty much torn it apart. This one I've just disassembled, and it just needs to be put back together. So again, I have some pictures and videos from the initial construction, and I will show you those next. Here's the construction of the torsion box, and this is the part that I may need to revisit to fix the warping in the table that I mentioned. Here's the chamfered table edge ready to receive the railing, and here's a close-up of one of the bearing blocks. And this is the first fitting of the Z-axis. It's a little loose, but it does slide. I need to tighten that up a bit because of all the wobble. That's the first fitting. It's always good to cut it a little long. I can trim it off and make it shorter and tighter. Alright, so one of the problems that I need to solve with this second CNC machine that I'm going to continue with, and I want to get this right from the very beginning, is making sure that the build surface or the platform is flat. And by flat, I mean, you know, I'm not talking about making sure that there are no bumps in it or anything like that. That will be taken care of by putting another board on top of this and cutting that board so it's completely smooth and flat. What I'm talking about here is making sure that there's no twist in the table. And I think this table has a twist in it. Now, it could be that my workbench is twisted, but you can see that there is some wobble to this torsion box, the table for the CNC machine. And I've put some winding sticks, really just a kind of a perfectly straight dark colored stick on this end and another one that's a little bit lighter color on this end, and by standing at a distance and looking down those two sticks, it does appear that this corner sits higher than this corner over here, or that corner. So it looks like this is twisted up, and that is matching the wobble that I'm seeing in this. So I'm going to do some more checks on this, and if I do need to fix this, there's a couple ways that I could see to go about this. It doesn't so much matter that the table itself is twisted, as long as these rails are not twisted with each other. So these rails have to be in a plane. So the four corners of the rails need to be in a flat plane. And a simple solution might just be that I take these rails off and maybe sand down the edge and put them back on so that the rails would then be perfectly straight with each other. And then when I put another board on top and cut it flat, everything will be fine. Even though there might still be a bit of wobble, I could trim that up, put some spacers underneath it, and as long as these rails are perfectly straight with each other and not twisted, that would solve the problem. I don't know if I take these rails off if I'm going to be able to get them back on in a sturdy manner though. So what I might do is take off this top layer of MDF. Now this is all screwed down and glued on, so there will be some deconstruction here to get this top layer off. But once the top layer of MDF is off, I think I should be able to straighten this torsion box and put a new layer of MDF down, glue it in, and make sure that the second attempt is actually glued down straight. So I still haven't decided yet. I have some investigation to go on to figure out which way I'm going to go with that. But Alright, so that's kind of an overview of where these projects stand, and I think that will be a good ending point for this video. Alright, bye.